Hi, and welcome to the Existential Coach. Today I'm going to talk about change, and the reason why I'm talking about this is I thought I would reflect upon the fact that I have a birthday coming up on the 20th of November, so in 5 days from when this podcast goes live. And it's a big-ish day. I'm turning 50. Now, different birthdays can mean different things to different people. 40 might stand out for one person, 30 might stand out for another, 50 might just be another day for somebody else. And I haven't decided what it does or doesn't mean, but as is the case with any birthday I've had, is it does provide me with an opportunity to reflect. Now, I must confess, and this won't be surprising given the nature of this podcast, finding times to reflect, finding times to think back on things and to think over things is not something that I shy away from. In fact, it's something I spend a considerable amount of time doing. So, with that in mind, what's the difference now? And this moves into an idea of how an event in our life can transform the way we look at things. So, just as I was thinking, I have reflected a lot on things, I tend to reflect a lot on things, that even so, the fact that I'm turning 50, the fact that there is this event, really shifts how I go about doing the thing I am doing all the time, which is reflecting. I heard this comedian on Instagram. Part of his routine was he was talking about photographs, and somebody showed him a photograph and said, this is a photo of me when I was younger. And the comedian said, all photos are photos of you or us when we're younger. And so what is it about that event? What is it about that moment when the photo was taken? What is it about a birthday, some other event in our life, the birth of a child, the death of someone? What is it about these that impact how we reflect? And in coming up on 50, there is this experience of aging, which is to say there is this experience of imagining myself continuing. Yet there are these reminders along the way that something may interrupt that an event may come along that transforms my uninterrupted idea of what aging is, that it is not for me to control, but that I am in some relationship with the unknown, which is to say, the unknown of my life. And so the event, the birthday in this case, is a reminder that I was once a person turning 30, I was once a person turning 40, and soon I will be a person turning 50. And it's not that this does or doesn't matter. It's not that it is or is not significant. It's that in there being an event, and as I said, in there being an event which then gives a kind of spotlight onto the experiences of reflection, there are, in addition to that, these times, these occasions where the experience or the event is more widely recognized, which is to say, if I'm just walking down the street and I observe something, maybe I see something endearing or I see something that's jarring, but generally speaking, it's a pretty incidental experience. It happens and I move on. It is an event, right? I am being awoke or woken from my habitual way of being in the world, yet the nature of the event doesn't mean it's going to necessarily carry on in my mind as, wow, that was this occasion, that was this standout event, that was this photograph in time of my experience. And similarly now, as I come up on 50, I think, well, this is going to be a thing. I need to make something out of it. I need to understand it or experience it or have some kind of realization. Yet, if I'm thinking about my birthday, my turning 50, in this way now, is it fair to assume I may have thought about this way of looking at a birthday when I turned, let's say, 40 or 30? But I don't really remember those birthdays. I know I turned 40. I know I turned 30. I know it happened. And I can remember things, in the case of my 40th, that happened around my 40th. But I don't actually remember that day. So now we have this added layer of I am moving towards a birthday, which I am thinking there's some kind of event or experience, some kind of whatever it is, and I'll unpack that in a moment. But I'm thinking there's going to be something to this thing called turning 50. But when I turned 40, I don't actually remember. So how can we have these events in our life and at the same time reconcile that many of these events are forgotten? That we are endowing things with meaning, seeking to have purpose, direction, seeking to understand the way in which we are ordered or organized in our world, yet we forget. When we step away from by analogy, the birthday cake, when we step away from that event, it starts to fade. Now, this is not to say that there aren't people who are very intentional about their birthdays. I've in fact talked to people who have spoken to me about how important birthdays are and how it is an opportunity for them to get together with a lot of people, family, for example. And in creating this connection, this get together, there's this real focusing of how this person exists in their life. And I didn't get the sense from some of these people I was speaking to about birthdays that they were saying, oh, it's the family coming together to say how wonderful I am. More, it was the family coming together to say that we're a family. And that each year there is a reminder that we are a family as I get older. And with each birthday within the family, there is a reminder that we are getting older, that we are a family that is existing through time. And that there is something continuous to that. Something even that transcends death to that. That we will carry on with these rituals, with these ceremonies, that we will find something through the unmarked path, or it's not even a path at this point, the unmarked potential of the future. And by creating this continuity, by having a birthday, by having these events, by snapping the photograph, and then saying, I was younger in that photograph, we are able to in some way create our experience of life, the thing we call life, the overall kind of gestalt, you could say, of life. And however we do that, what we are doing is locating ourselves in time. And to whatever degree, we are doing it by these events. So, what does it mean to turn 50? Well, I'm going to approach this from two different ways. The first is I'm going to say it means nothing to get older, right? That it's just another day. It's just another year of my life. It has no meaning. And so as a result, to celebrate a birthday has therefore no value. Why would you do things that have no meaning? And this makes sense from the perspective that we create time, we endow things with meaning, so we create meaning. So why would we create a sense of meaning and then not see ourselves through that meaning? And it's that last part that I think is really interesting. It's this idea that we need to be seen. We need to be able to look back at the photograph and say, I was younger in that photograph. And similar here, we might say, well, birthdays don't matter. But can we see ourselves in the event? Do we exist? And what does existence mean? Is there a criteria? Is there a methodology? Is there a habitual structure? What is a nomenclature? It doesn't really matter. But what is it that we call the event? And the dynamic or the relationship that we have within this dynamic or relationship is something that constitutes us in how we feel. And I kind of have to leave it there, because what do we feel? Do we feel like it doesn't matter? It shouldn't matter? It's not supposed to matter? Is that actually a way of trying to deny that we are aging? Because if I am not celebrating birthdays, am I also not getting older? Of course, a part of me very much knows I still have a birthday, or a part of me may very well still know that I have a birthday. Nonetheless, is there a part of me that thinks I can get around it somehow by not celebrating the birthday, by not going there, by not saying it matters? And that's key. By not saying it matters, it won't happen. And if it won't happen, I won't have to face it happening. And the key part here is the idea of it as a happening is an event. So what is the relationship to the event? How do we experience ourselves in relationship to the happening? How do we experience ourselves in relationship to the event? And what is the dynamic? What is the relationship that is enacted as a result of that? Are we happy? Are we sad? Are we afraid? Are we agitated? What do we feel in our gut? What do we feel in our body? How are we encompassed within this kind of gestalt experience, or this womb-like experience, this holistic-like experience, where in this moment we are felt to not matter, to not be a part of the event, as if the photograph was never taken. And so a part of this side of exploring this idea of birthdays not mattering is to say, well, what is mattering? What does it mean for something to matter? Well, we come back to the event. Something matters when there's something that we've constituted as having meaning. That means it has a purpose, a direction, a meaning, a value. The event is meaning. And by ignoring the event or negating the event, that does not mean we negate meaning. So, if ignoring the event is a way to avoid meaning, really all that's happened is we've created a different way to experience meaning. And we could say that this is a meaning in negation. And it may make somebody quite happy to not go along and have the birthday like other people. I think it's quite natural. I've talked to a bunch of people over the years who, I want to have my birthday in this way. I want to do it in that way. My spouse wants this. My parents want that. But I want to have the birthday in my way. And they are, in fact, negating. They are saying, my meaning matters. My event matters. My birthday matters. Even to the point where I'm not going to have a party. I'm not going to do any of the things you want because I get to do that on my birthday. And that might be the only time that person feels like they can say no. They can say, I do not have to do what you want because you get me to do things that I don't want to do. But on my birthday, you cannot make me. Why? Because it is my birthday. Now, in this example, and I hope this highlights that even in negation, it's still an event, that we do not escape the event. So if that's the case, then now we can go to the other side. The birthday really matters. It's the most important day of the year. It's everything. So it has a huge buildup. There's a great deal of anticipation. There's a great deal of excitement. There is this almost flourishing that surrounds the experience of the birthday. As I say, the buildup and the planning and all these kinds of things is an added enrichment of the experience whereby we are feeling the birthday with this anticipatory crescendo in a great romantic symphony that is building bar after bar, modulation after modulation, accelerando upon accelerando, and so it comes to this day. And what is happening, in a sense, is the person is experiencing the anticipation coming to a culmination. The event has such a rich, dramatic climb that to get there is to, as if, stand on a vista and look out at whatever it was that they were looking for. And again, what's been created? An event. In both examples, meaning and the event are synonymous. So, as we think about our birthdays, whether we want to have it or don't want to have it, it doesn't really matter. It's still an event. It still has meaning, even if it's meaning in negation. And I'm somewhere in between. I don't really want to do anything for my birthday. I would like it just to be quiet. Yet, I would also like it to matter somehow. And I really don't know how that would happen. I think if somebody made it to do it on my birthday, I would just feel uncomfortable. I would feel like I'm performing for them. Yet, I simultaneously feel like I would like something to happen, like I'd like it to kind of stand out. Not necessarily in the moment, but stand out so I can remember it. Because I know that I don't remember my birthdays. There's only one birthday that I really remember by date. But it was because it was the last birthday before my mother died. And I was with her for the last months of her life. And so I was in her apartment and we were spending time together and talking as she was in the palliative care stages of cancer. And that experience was so transformational in my life. And I turned 25 there. That stands out for me. That I became 25 at that point, at that experience. And so it stands out. So it is in some way equated with the end of life. Yet other birthdays, I'll remember fragments, but I won't quite remember what age I was, or I'll remember it was around a certain age, but I won't remember what was happening on that day. So all of this stuff starts to fragment. So my sense is, what if a birthday as an event is disorienting? What if we have this experience where it is kind of unraveling? And we tell people we're into it, we tell people we're not into it. But underneath those things, we are aware that there's something else going on that perhaps we aren't able to express it in language. So what I mean by this is, there may be a joy to aging and there may be a sorrow to aging. But how do we express the joy and sorrow of aging through the medium, if you will, of events? Yet, the events themselves are by their very nature transient. But we feel ourselves to in some way be transcendent to these things. So, how can we be an age when we are no age? How can we be no age and then be an age? In other words, we're experiencing this paradox of the event as this thing that we are either engaging positively with or negatively with, but it still exists as the thing we are engaging. And it is going to dissipate. It is going to fragment. It is going to fade. It is going to become a memory. It is going to become a photograph that we look at and we say, I was younger once. So, as I think about my birthday and I think about this experience of aging, and I think about, what I'm going to be doing on the birthday, really, I don't know what the right answer is. And what I'm doing is I'm seeing my folks. They're coming to town. I think we're going to see Little Canada in Toronto, and we're going to go eat. And then at 6/12, I guess is technically when I was born, on November 20th, I will be 50. But what do I think? I don't actually think about being 50. And I say this with a smile on my face because I'm realizing in talking through this that what I'm thinking about in turning 50 is turning 60. And what it feels like is the event of turning 50 is more like I am walking through gates. And going into my 40s felt very different, even though I can't remember exactly what I did on my 40th. But going into my 40s feels very different than going into my 50s, because going into my 50s feels very much like I am going to be 60, which I will in 10 years and 5 days. And that is my birthday present, a realization of the finite aspects of my life. That I am about 15 years away from my mother's age when she died. That I am passing the age of people I've known who have passed. That I am walking towards this overall fragmentation. And the birthday gift is this awareness of my finiteness, that I am going to have these next 10 years, hopefully, and within that, continue to explore my thoughts, just as I'm doing on this podcast, and journaling and all the rest of it. And that's the opportunity I have. These next 10 years are a new period of education. And I use that in the etymology I'm thinking of has to do with like to bring forth, and it was in reference to like midwifery, right? So educating in that sense, not in the pedantic, hierarchical, power structure, patriarchal sense. So educating, the bringing forthness, you could say. This is what I'm excited about with turning 50. And a friend of mine, I asked her, I said, what was it like, turning 30, turning 40, and then when she turned 50? And she said, I give fewer fucks. And that really kind of is the gift that I see, as it is to embrace the fragmentation as not a loss of the ways life should be, the events, the meaning, and all the rest of it, but it is a fragmenting of the bullshit, a fragmenting of the ego and the defense systems that people have, mine included. It is a walking towards the deconstruction of my own life. It is a witnessing of my own decomposition. And this is the marriage, you could say, or the merger of these two dimensions I pointed out earlier about the positive as in rah-rah and the negative as in complete negation of the birthday, that it is this kind of vortex of these two forces that is created and uncreated or decreated. It is constructed and deconstructed. It is built and then unbuilt. Not broken, but unbuilt. It's a shattering that is experienced in a dream, which is to say, you are looking at something and seeing it complete and simultaneously broken, and vice versa. You're looking at something that is broken and seeing it as simultaneously complete. The interaction or the dynamic, then going back to what I was saying at the very beginning, the dynamic is something that I can either embrace or not. Will I, in my 50s, choose to run to one dynamic, or will I broaden my own experience, expand the horizon of my experiences, and in that overarching kind of canopy, will I spread out and expand, or will I recede? The gift of turning 50 is the birthday is so small because the experience is so big. It's the paradox. Now, this is not to say everybody should have a small birthday or a big birthday. I'm not talking literally here. I'm talking more poetically in the sense that I am so small in the scope of things. And each breath is a a tick in a clock on a watch that has a battery life for an undetermined period of time. And I can either bring meaning to the event of my life and find within the paradox, the conundrum of my life, the uncertainty or the unknown of my life, something that is mysterious, that draws me forward, that brings me forth, that in effect births me towards this new experience. Or I can reduce everything. And if there's one thing that's clear about turning 50 and subsequently moving through the gates towards this decade on my way to 60, it is not only do I want to give fewer fucks, and not only do I want to unpack more bullshit, but I want to experience the event of vulnerability not as a submission, but as a recognition of the complex interconnected relationships between these forces, positive and negative, good, bad, right, wrong, and so on, and find within that my own path. And it will be a very, very quiet path. And so in thinking about that quiet path, it feels beautiful. Because I can look back and think about my life at 5 and now my life almost at 50. And another kind of charming or childish way of looking at this is my favorite number has always been 5. So I pick 5 and 50 because there is this kind of symmetry to that experience. And I wonder if within that symmetry exists the beginning of a kind of mythological or ritualistic way that isn't ceremony based, but that chooses to see connections in ways that create events. Because remember, like the example I gave of walking down the street and seeing somebody do something or step out and surprise you or whatever it is, those tiny discrete events all add up with each one weave in this tapestry of our life, add up to something. Not in a hierarchical sense, but in a sense that there's a building towards its ultimate destruction. So you might think I'm ending this podcast with the birthday present of destruction. And I am, but the point of it is freeing, because the expectation, the idea that it should be something, that it should have this meaning, removes me from this experience of what it is. I'm only going to turn 50 once. And just like that comedian said, all photographs, and in all photographs, we were younger. And so, I was younger. And each year I get to say, I was younger for a longer period of time. And now, I'm older for a shorter period of time. And I'm looking at what it's going to be to turn 60 in 10 years. I'm thinking about turning 50 in 5 years. And I am yet again reflecting on my life. And I am yet again finding events that stand out and in some way evoke something within me. And just like here in this podcast, I follow them just to see where they go. And just like the end of each podcast, they come to an end. And that becomes the cadence.